We are at MIT Press. We launched very recently a new journal, the American Journal of Health Economics. The second issue just came out. It's a quarterly, so this is a very new journal. And the editor-in-chief is very concerned with impact factor and citations, and it is frequently asking me those exact questions. And so at this point, we are looking at altmetrics as the way to show impact at this stage, because there aren't a lot of citations, or may not be any citations at this point. But I can report to him, we have, number of downloads happening. We're seeing all these posts to Facebook and Twitter. We're seeing articles being saved and abstracts being shared. So yes, we are sharing that kind of information directly with our editors.
I'm sure you stopped asking.
Oh yeah, that was it.
Yeah, I guess at Wiley, historically, I know how difficult it is to get into, to have an impact factor. I mean, what we would do before we had, before we even had download data, I guess what we would say is, what are the journals, if you could name your ideal paper, where is that paper coming out? Like the paper that you would want to publish, where is it? And then we would look at usage and impact data for those articles, and we would say, well, here's where you may want to be looking for authors. Here's where we think people are going to be reading your stuff, so let's push it there. Here are some themes that we're seeing come out in the literature in that field through Web of Science. Now I think, downloads, we measure, I think that the standard is around, you have to actually download the full text or the PDF, not just the abstract, but we talk about abstract views. So yeah, there are a lot of other journal publishers in the room too, so I'm sure there are other ways at that. But, I think that, I said it earlier, but I think that the impact factor as the gold standard, I personally like the fact that there are other players out there now, other ways at this kind of information, because we publish lots in the humanities, and obviously they don't have impact factors, and there's no way to measure that way.
I think it's really important to kind of, when you talk about impact factor and comparing it to altmetrics, to bear in mind that impact factor is a measure of a journal, is a measure of a journal editor's ability to pick things that's going to get cited, and that's literally what it measures. Whereas altmetrics, by definition, is an article level metric. Yeah. So it's it's designed to measure two completely different things.
Yeah. I guess, so I guess that's kind of at the heart of the question is, again, what are we marketing? What are we selling? And I think that the unit of measure is changing along with, the way we measure. We weren't able before to really look at article level impact in the way that we do now. So, but you're right. I don't mean to conflate the two things, because I know they're different.
I think what we've used, again, because things take so long to come out in the scholarly literature, we're using our altmetric tool to just show immediate attention. And so that way, when our board directors are saying, what's happening with our report? What's happening with our report? And the poor program staff is like, we're able to provide some kind of context for them. And so that's kind of how we've been using it.
I'll just echo what Phil said, that we have to be careful not to conflate units of analysis here. I think that's exceedingly important. But there have been a number of correlative studies between citations and altmetrics, and though they vary significantly by discipline, and those significant, the correlations are moderate and low, still, for some disciplines, altmetrics can be an early indicator of citation receipt. So in that way, using those as an argument that these might garner citations can, with all of those caveats, be used.
I have a question, if I may. So we have to remember that altmetrics is not just about social media, right? It's you often get this accusation that altmetrics is just kind of this vanity record of tweets and things, and it's much more than that. As we've heard, it's all about everything from legislative impact to mainstream media and all the rest of it. But that aside, if you if an author or an author's colleague or somebody in the same lab or something is tweeting or engaging on social media, or they are talking to a journalist or something, at what point are they gaming, and at what point are they doing good public outreach? Where does the line lie between those two ideas? Do you want to start on this and work down again like we did before?
I actually don't want to answer that question.
All right, so let's start with Cassidy then.
No comment.
We can start at this end. I'd add a third thing to that. I think there's gaming, there's publicity, but there's also networking. And so where I found that use of social media for researchers to be actually the most useful is for young researchers and for doctoral students. So I've seen several examples in my lab of students who've gotten invitations to conferences or to publish or collaborate because they were active, because they had a profile, had a reputation online. So I'd also keep that sort of reputation management, but early researcher reputation manager, which can be critical for their future trajectory. I think that that's a third play on that. Where are those boundaries? I think they're highly permeable, and I think that they're easily abused.
I think I've been trying to counsel my staff, so they're sort of making their first foray into marketing on social media. So maybe we can take a backwards look at it, and if you did launch this campaign on social media, this was a good way for them to monitor it. Was it worth the time they spent on marketing? If they put all this effort into a Twitter campaign and 5 people, maybe it wasn't a good use of their time. So I think that's what we're trying to do with Altmetric.
Yeah, I mean, I think once again, I guess from my perspective, it's about context. So I think, I don't think any reasonable person would want to compare the Altmetric score of one paper to another without knowing where those mentions are coming from. And I think you saw in our author in the survey that we did when we were running the Altmetric trial that the number one source of information that people cited being grateful to have was from traditional news media. It was, I don't remember the order now, but social media were further down to the right there. And you can game Web of Science too. I mean, I spent a lot of time talking to editors of journals about why it's inappropriate to demand that, every author cite your journal a couple of times, and how that can actually get you kicked out of Web of Science. So I was reading, about, I'm not, the altmetric expert at Wiley, but so I'm sort of presenting other people's stuff, but I was sort of reading up on it, and I know that there's a lot of talk about how it's much easier to game it, but you can game any system, and it's just knowing what you're looking at when you get the numbers out.
I'm not entirely convinced that altmetrics is that much easier to game than impact.
Really? Okay. Yes.
I don't entirely agree with that. And while it's obvious that it's easy to tweet about yourself, the point of altmetrics is everything has to be in context, right? You have to look at those mentions of what they actually mean. So it may be very easy to tweet about yourself, but it's easier to engage in coercive citation or citation cartels than it is to, convince the BBC News or CNN to cover your science.
Well,
or to get mentioned in a policy document.
Well, is your cutesy abstract going to impress your tenure committee? Is that number that comes from that cutesy abstract? It's great, but I didn't mean to interrupt, but yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And for what I'm doing as a publisher, we're not using that altmetric.com score in any of our promotions. We're looking at that score ourselves and then looking at the data that has created that score and making decisions based on that piece, the contextual piece of it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's key, right, is that it's a rich data set, that it is you can qualitatively analyze it, whereas something like citation counts or downloads, some people say is not metric, is just a number. And online mentions is more than that.
Well, I was thinking too about what you said, and there's another question, Jill, about the compilations that you're putting together, and we did a lot of that. We called them virtual issues, and we would have editors curate them. We had graduate students curate them and stuff, and we've actually kind of curtailed those because what we found, and our economics obviously totally different, two totally different kinds of presses, but that there was a spike, resulting from those, but there was no sustained, increase in readership or impact that we could see across time. And that's not to say that they're not worth doing, because I totally want to buy the one about spies now. But I think that, it depends on what your goal is, I guess. Sorry. Phil, you're in charge. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's quite all right. So we have another question here.
Yeah, I know we're right at
Yeah. Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. My name is Stephanie. I'm from the Smithsonian. And you've all been really emphasizing that altmetrics only work and can be useful if you use them in context, right? And I guess what I'm wondering is, seems like the trouble that we've all gotten into with impact factor is that impact factor is very useful, but with lots of context for it, we sort of got lazy. And instead of actually thinking about it for what it was meant to measure, then, you know, whether it's tenure committees or anybody, we just started looking at a number and said, okay, here's the scale, and if this is your number, then that's good, and if that's not your number, then that's bad. What do you think that there is a risk that altmetrics in 15 years is going to be exactly the same thing? Like, everybody's really jazzed about it right now because there's so much rich data with altmetrics that we're excited about digging through 800 Twitter mentions to like find out quantitatively what people think about it. But in 15 years, are we going to be like, that is just way too much work, and all of a sudden altmetric is impact factor 2.0, where it started out as this kind of idealistic thing, and now it's just turned into like.
All right. So on Goddard's law.
Yes, I think is the answer. But no, I don't think it's in 15 years. It's now. I think that we're perhaps being a little aspirational to think that a P&T committee is going to read through 6,000 tweets. They're not. They're going to look at a number, and a bigger number is better than a smaller one. And that's the reality of doing assessments at this scale. There's also, again, that quality concern. So we've been saying BBC and news reporting, but Altmetric, which is providing a lot of these data, doesn't get behind paywalls. It only uses publicly accessible data. So your New York Times mention isn't there. Your Chronicle of Higher Education measure isn't there, right? So the top places that we're hoping to find our impact is not measured in that donut. And so a lot of these concerns are about the quality of the data that's provided.
From a librarian standpoint, I don't ever expect one tool to do everything for me, so I'm going to probably use the best that, you know, that's out there, and use it collectively, you know, to the best of my ability. And maybe we should change donut to window. It's more like a window into online attention. Maybe then people won't be so scared of it.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to let you two answer that one because, you know, they're much better at predicting the future. I'm thinking that that you should bottle your the wonderful dashboard that you have and sell it, because we would buy it. It's I mean, it's amazing. But yeah, I don't know. What else? Who knows what's going to come along next too? I mean, it may be something completely different. It may not be the article that you're. You know, maybe little bits of data that we sell, and you know, we may not sell the article. We may sell the services around the article.
All right, so we have time for one more question, if we make it quick. So, David?
Quick comment and then a quick question. We've all made fun of Twitter here and problems with that, but another big component of Altmetrics is download usage numbers. And those are just as problematic in a lot of ways. You look at the most downloaded articles in cost, and it's weird sexual practices and trickbacks. So the sensational, the funny, and the weird get factored in there as well. It's hard to interpret what attention means for impact. And to me, what's really interesting about Altmetrics right now, at least, is not measuring impact, but there are a lot of other really interesting things we can learn from Altmetrics. And Jill gave some examples of not necessarily saying this is the most important, most societally impactful article, but there are other things we can learn from it, there are other things we can do from that. And I wanted to ask in particular in some of these institutions, what other uses do you see for Altmetrics outside of this researcher evaluation or research evaluation?
I mean, I think institutions are marketing themselves as well, and certainly at Indiana University, our communications officers are watching these for the same thing, right? We have one thing that goes viral, but we want to highlight that. Let's make a video around that. Let's have promotional material around that. So in the same way that MIT Press is using that qualitatively to brand itself and market itself, institutions are doing that as well.
I think that's what, aside from the like little donut detail page, there's the Altmetric for institution. And so I have subscription to that, and so I can get snapshots like at a department level. And so I'm looking to figure out a way, again, to disseminate that, because I still can't get my staff to actually go to that platform. I have to, you know, what was that one where the girl was yelling? You know, that's kind of what I have to do, so.
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, I'd just like to say, David, that not everybody thinks that download counts are an altmetric. But with that, so thank you all for coming. There is apparently refreshments in the exhibitor hall, and could we all thank the speakers one last time?